Hello and welcome back to the Popcorn for Dinner podcast. It's a podcast where we are mourning all our favorite shows. Today we're talking about the series finale of HBO's Barry. And joining me one final time talking about this show, he's back from another audition for the Mask Collector. Guys, it's Jeremiah.
Hey guys,
Jeremiah,
yeah,
I have hope for you. I think you can get that one black guy in the acting class. I think that role can be
I'm
yours.
dead. But yeah, no, one last time for Barry. Wow, it's been a good run.
It's been a good run. It's been a great run, actually. I think it's been a top tier run. Yeah, we're talking about Barry series finale. Um, and that's because we've approached it. We've arrived at it. The week I've been dreading for 3 months. It's finale week, right? So most likely, if you listen to this, our episode on Succession finale would also be on the podcast already, the podcast feed. So please check that out. Um, Jeremiah, have you seen Succession? Have you seen the finale?
No,
So you
I've
haven't.
seen like the first 20 minutes,
Oh
but
my
like
god.
I was just too tired. Like I kept like what's funny? I tried to stay up because I told you I went to a festival yesterday, so I tried to stay up to watch Succession, and literally like 5 minutes before it aired, I fell asleep. So when I woke up this morning, I was thinking, should I watch Succession first? But I saw it was an hour and a half, and we have Barry to record, so I decided to watch Barry first.
Well,
So I've seen like 20 minutes of Succession, then I fell asleep again because I was just so tired today.
I can't believe you're watching the show in parts. That's not
I'm
too
no,
bad.
I'm gonna
That's so
watch the
wrong.
whole thing because like I was
You
too
better.
sleepy. I'm gonna watch the whole thing like from beginning.
You better. Speaking of finales, Yellow Jackets episode on the season 2 finale is now out on the feed. Please check that out as well if you watch the show. The Ted Lasso finale will be back later this week on
Mm.
Friday, the season 3, and probably the series finale with Chinedu and Emmanuel. We might have a special guest for that. We'll see. And finale is Love and Death. If you watched the Elizabeth Olsen True Crime Show, the finale of that aired last week, and our episode on that is also up. Speaking of things that aired last week, Paramount Plus released their new show No Escape on Paramount Plus in the UK. I'm not sure where I think it's out internationally. I'm not sure yet. Anyways, I got to speak with the stars of that show, Abigail Laurie and Rian Barreto, and it was a very, very nice
Pretty
and
cool.
interesting conversation. So please check that out. Um, should we talk about Barry one final
Yeah.
time? So this is Barry season 4, episode 8,
Wow.
titled "Wow." Written and directed by series co-creator Bill Hader, and it's the series finale. Give me your one sentence reaction to this episode.
Wow. No,
Fair enough.
literally.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Fair enough. Um, I asked for that because during the episode, literally at the end, I remember I said it out loud. I was like, "Wow, what a dark ending!" Like the ending is just so to me, it's just so dark. And I guess we'll talk about that later as we go on. Um, But we're gonna start. I want to start with Hank and Fuchs. I want to start with those guys, and then we'll go to the rest a bit later. The episode picks off kind of where last week's episode ended. So Hank calls Fuchs and let him know that he has Barry, or he will have Barry, because he has Sally and John as
Mhm.
bait. Um, and then no, Hank says something to Sally, which was just. He says to her, "Let me guess, you were in a bad place." And this is about her coming to LA. You were in a bad place and you felt like he was the only one who could help you. And it just reminds you that everyone feels safe around Barry, which is why they keep coming to him. Like obviously
Yeah.
Sally said it flat out earlier in the season that she felt safe around him. But even beginning of the season, when Hank is like having the nightmare about what happened in Bolivia, what does he see? He sees Barry in this prison in the jail cell. He was like, "Oh, how do we get out of this?" Just like Barry has this thing of making people feel safe, and obviously it's the abuser thing where the abuser makes you feel like you will only be safe around them, and that you have to keep coming back to them. So it's like, oh yeah, they're not. It's not the same kind of love, but like Hank knows what Sally's feeling, and Hank knows why Sally will be indebted to Barry or so intertwined with Barry. And I just thought that was just a very nice line. Um, and then we're led to the face off, the Reservoir Dogs style face off between Hank's very well dressed gang. I didn't realize how well dressed his gang was until we saw them in the wide. I was like, oh, when you compare them to like the Ravens gang, I'm like, oh, like his second in command is dressed like him, like floral shirt, blazer and
Mm,
trousers. Like you have somebody that was wearing like a coat. Like I can't even describe the jacket he was wearing with the gun underneath. I was like, oh, you guys are actually Hank's men, aren't you? You're all cut from the same cloth, literally. Anyway, so
fairs.
we then move to Fuchs trying to. They have a bit of a conversation, a great scene back and forth, and Fuchs tries to get Hank to admit to killing Cristobal. He even says that if he just admits it, he'll walk away and Hank would never see Fuchs again. What do you think of this scene? What do you think of this in this conversation between Fuchs and Hank in the back and forth before the guns start firing?
Before the gun stuff firing, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
the whole episode feels like, all the characters are going through these final tests, and Fuchs, in his own way, offers Hank some sort of final lifeline. And for a
Mm-hmm.
second, you almost think, it's that finale where the characters all drop their delusions, like people are saying, and they sort of try to embrace who they are, which is what, like, Fuchs literally just said he's doing. Like, he's
Mm-hmm.
accepted who he is, and he's living that way, and he wants Hank to do the same. But then Hank is like, no, he decides, nope, I'm still gonna fight. I'm still gonna prove that I am, better, or whatever the case may be. I'm still gonna prove that. But instead, he just, like, sorry. Instead of just going on with the accepting that he did set up, and he was part of the organization that killed Cristobal. It wasn't their enemies, it was him. He
Mm-hmm.
still decides to deny that, and then almost kind of starts, or it looks like he was about to start the shootout himself, but obviously Fuchs beat him to that. Like, it just reinforces that theme that those who still choose, to continue being bad would ultimately meet a certain end.
Yeah, Anthony Carrigan has a line in an interview I was reading just before we recorded where he's like, "If you live the life of a gangster, you get the death of a gangster," right? And it's kind of
Facts.
what we've seen. We see Breaking Bad shows like that, Ozark shows that like the ending. If you're going to live that life, we've discussed it. Like maybe there's only so many endings somebody like that could have, right?
Mm,
It's either you're going to lose everyone around you, or you're going to lose yourself, either literally or figuratively.
yeah.
Maybe it's like you won, but at what cost? It's like so. It's like either you die or something inside you dies, or everyone around you dies. But like really, there are only so many endings to something like that. Yes, I remember when Fuchs was giving this like mini soliloquy, I was like, huh, he's basically saying what the characters have gone through in the last 8 years. Because what does he say? I wrote it down. He was like, it says to Hang, he's like, admit that you were scared, that you hate yourself, and that there are some days that you don't think you deserve to live. And the only thing that you make you forget is by being someone else. And like the Fuchs basically became the Raven. He's someone else. Hank became this kind of like outwardly facing businessman CEO
Mhm.
who has all these underdealings underneath. You have Barry and Sally who are now Carl and I can't remember what Sally's name was. Anyway,
Emily, I think. Yeah, Emily.
is it something like, anyway?
It was that
But
partner,
they're all living this like this new life. Like they're
maybe.
all trying to be someone else to avoid it's kind of like the biggest state of denial. And I was like, oh yeah. And in a way, Fuchs is the only one who's like you mentioned earlier. He's the only one who knows who he is, and
Mm.
he's accepted it. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. Even Gene. I mean, we'll talk about Gene obviously, but Gene went away for 8 years thinking he had found this enlightenment and that he was now a quote unquote good person. And then at the first sign of fame or whatever, he reverts, and it's like, oh, like you guys were or everybody was just living their this kind of fake life because they didn't want to confront the truth and what they really were. um yeah, and then like you said, there's a point where we think that Hank is going to do it, and he says to I wrote down the back and forth because I just thought the scene was just so good. So Hank says he was the love of my life. Fuchs says I know, It wasn't supposed to happen. It never is.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be safe. We all do. Again, that word safe. That word safe is really, really playing a subtle lead role and like but that search of safety is like what do you actually do, what how far would you go to find something that makes you safe or makes you feel safe.
Mm.
um but Hank doesn't go all the way, and I don't know part of I think this I'd like to know what you think. I think this can be interpreted in maybe one of two ways. It could be that he doesn't want to give Fuchs the satisfaction and he wants to actually protect this son John, sorry, this boy John, or maybe he just again cannot break that barrier. He can't like go all the way and confess that he killed Cristobal. So what does he do? He tells Fuchs to go fuck himself. What do you think? What do you think goes through Hank's mind in that moment? Like, why does he not go all the way? Why does he not say what Fuchs wants him to say?
I'm not entirely sure, but I think I'm more leaning towards the can't give Fuchs that satisfaction because he himself, within himself, has not accepted. So it'd be like he could say it just to say it and
Hmm.
let Fuchs go and there'll be peace or whatever. But if he says that, is he accepting it within himself and believe in it, which he doesn't, or I guess he's not ready to accept in a sense. Unlike a lot of characters, some of them are ready to accept what they've done, others are not, and Hank is one of those who isn't. Um, and so, if confessing that means accepting that that's who he is, he clearly isn't ready for that. I don't think it's a thing of um, I'm gonna save the boy from Fuchs because
Hmm.
if the boy was the concern, like whether he said it or not, he could still protect the boy. Um,
That's true. That's actually a good point. You're right. Like him saying it would have been the good thing to protect the boy, like because then Fuchs would have just gone away. So yeah, it's more of a selfish decision than an altruistic one.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a yeah. Because I felt like it was one of those two things, and I wasn't really sure where I was leaning to. But I think your explanation kind of makes sense, and obviously we see that shot of him pulling John back in, kind of like again that could be under his protection or under his supervision and control.
Yeah,
But
control
again,
more
probably
like yeah.
lean more towards yeah control and supervision. Yeah, so he tells Fuchs to go fuck himself, and that leads to like I alluded to earlier, the Reservoir Dogs style of a shootout where basically everyone dies. Fuchs jumps on. Well, you mentioned that Fuchs shoots Hank before all of this.
Hmm.
Well, Fuchs jumps on John to protect John, and then Sally runs and to hide behind a pillar. And then Barry, who we'll talk about properly in a second, arrives at the scene um after everything is done, and it's just like it's the beauty of the show. It's like I think we talked about it some points last season where just like the show could actually exist without Barry.
Yeah.
Like everyone is kind of like intertwined because of Barry, but at some points the show could exist without Barry because like now Barry, who is the eponymous character of this show, arrives to the big
Yeah.
gunfight of the series finale with his own guns, but by the time he comes, the gunfight is over. That's actually kind of weirdly like I was like, oh, that's a thing that happened. But yeah, so Fuchs then delivers John to Barry, who has arrived ready for a war, and they share a wordless exchange, and then Fuchs returns to the darkness, which if anyone who's paying attention, Bill Hader has kind of used that darkness a few times,
Mm.
especially in the last two seasons, very well. First time I remember was when after Sally Sally has the whole Contgate speech, and then her agent is dropping her, and she's going about on this rant and saying stuff. I'm saying how the agent doesn't really care about her, and then you can just see her slowly walk back into the
Yeah.
darkness, and I was meant to visualize that she's becoming just a worse person. Because like obviously the next time we see her, she's plotting to kill her ex friend and eventually does kill somebody. That was her going into the darkness. And then this season we see Barry step out of that darkness when he's at Sally's apartment before they can
Mm.
escape into 8 years into the future. And then this episode, we obviously, like I just mentioned, Fuchs walks back into darkness. So I think that was probably like this is it, right? Like there's no turning back for Fuchs. He's the Raven now.
Mm.
He's gonna be a crime lord. He's probably gonna die in some shootout
Okay,
event
that
in
gives me a
X
better
years
ending
time.
for Fuchs than I was feeling at first because I was like, "There's no way Fuchs did get a redemption story or happy ending or something. Like,
Oh
no, like
no.
he accepted that it was the Raven. As soon as, even as I was saying that, I was like, yeah, so he's accepted that he's evil. But like
Hmm.
that kind of
Hmm.
reinforces that in a way that makes sense because like him and Barry exchanging a look is like, is all forgiven here? Like that doesn't make you know.
Well, no, I think all is forgiven between
Yeah,
them,
but like
but I don't think
exactly,
he's
that's what I mean.
redemptive.
Like it's
Yeah.
not like if it was some sort of redemption in that, if that was the meaning, then it would have been weird. But like when you pick up that theme of walking back and out of darkness, um, then
Hmm.
yes, it makes sense. Um,
Yeah. I I rewatched the pilot last night,
okay.
and the biggest thing for me from watching that pilot is that I completely forgot that Barry doesn't kill Ryan Madison.
Oh yeah, when I was rewatching as
I
well, yeah,
completely forgot that. I was like, so like all of this really is like he did really start it. Like he wasn't really him that killed. It was the Chechens. It was Hank and everyone else. Anyway, but something that they mentioned in that pilot and they said obviously episodes after is how Barry describes Fuchs in that monologue to Gene. He says he was a friend of my dad's, basically an uncle to me, right? And he's known him
mm,
since Barry was 7. Obviously, we see that scene this season. And I was just thinking when he was delivering John to Barry, I was just thinking like that's who he is again to John. If that makes sense. Like obviously, I don't think he's gonna find John in 20 years time and make him an assassin because
let's hope
if he
not.
does, then Fuchs needs to let us know his workout routine. But no,
Right,
because like what has he done? It's a friend. Is a friend of John's father has saved him, right? Has like so it's like he's almost playing that role again for Barry Jr., quote unquote. I just thought I was like, huh. I was like,
interesting.
that's a thing. But yeah, I don't think no, I definitely don't think Fuchs is being redemptive or having a redemptive arc. I think he was just I think the thing that is constant about Fuchs the Raven, whatever, is that he loves Barry, right? And everything that's ever happened, that he's ever done, was because he felt slighted by Barry. He felt hurt by Barry,
Mm.
right? It's either he felt like Barry was leaving him for Gene, or Barry thought he was better than this, and Barry was going to go to acting instead of killing. Like everything he
Where
ever
does bad
did was because
things?
was because he loved Barry, and I think that love for Barry is like it's just constant. It's there. Like I think actually that is a good. Let me ask you this question: when do you think Fuchs decided that he was going to save John?
Ooh, that's a great question because now I'm thinking. I was convinced he was like I didn't think he would kill John, obviously. But when he saw John at the
Mm-hmm,
bathtub, I was convinced he saw that as, oh, this is serious. Like Barry will come because I know Barry. Barry will
mm-hmm,
come. But at that time, I didn't consider was he coming to save them because in my head he was coming to kill Barry. Um,
mm-hmm,
I think the obvious answer for me first would have been like, yeah, like right when he knew there was a shootout about to happen, he jumped there and he's like, yeah, like the boy needs to be protected. But clearly from the beginning, um, for him to have done that, he must have cared for the boy a little bit. So he definitely wouldn't have let
mm-hmm,
anything happen to John. So in a sense, it could have been as early as when he saw him on FaceTime, but I think it's more when he got down to Nohobal and he's like, okay, but where's the boy? Not just Sally,
mm,
because at that point it's like I'm going to take them both, and then whatever I do to Barry is within my control. But also, I'm not going to let anything happen, or maybe I won't necessarily let anything happen to the boy because the boy is innocent in all this. Um, and maybe he would have played the father figure role again if Barry and Sally died, for instance, and John survived or whatever. It might have just been in his head, but then instinctively, once the shootout dropped, that love for Barry and love for, in a sense, an extension of Barry. Like maybe young John reminds him of young Barry as well. Who knows? Like maybe it was like when he was introduced to young Barry, that scene where Barry comes and meets Fuchs for the first time. Maybe he had like a moment like that again. And he decided,
mm-hmm.
nope, I'm gonna do it right this time, or whatever. I have no idea, but yeah, it's an interesting question to think about. But I feel like it was more
Yeah, I mean,
instinctive.
okay, so I read it as there are two options. Either like you mentioned, maybe he sees him on FaceTime, or when he comes to the headquarters and sees him in person. this might be an overly romantic view on it, but I think the moment he sees John, he kind of sheds all hatred for Barry and doesn't want to kill Barry anymore. I think he sees John and it's almost like John is bigger than his feud with Barry.
Mm,
Like he sees John and he's like, okay, I want to end this. I want John, I want Barry to be with John. Like I think he sees Sally as like whatever, like ugh, okay, that's just the person. But then he sees John as like, oh, is that his son? Like that's someone that could change things. That's someone that could. I do know it's overly romantic, but I
I
think
think
there
that
is evidence
I
for
think
it
it
in the
makes
text.
sense because then he sees
Yeah.
John, and then him and Hank are still having their little back and forth, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Okay, I'll tell you what." Well, I'm paraphrasing here, but then all of a sudden he's like, "Okay, fine,
Hmm.
new deal. We go like you just admit what you did, and we'll go away forever. Like you won't, there won't be any war here. Just admit what you did, like offering them a
Hmm.
way out. Maybe that's also partly because it's like, okay, I'm gonna take them off your hands. We're gonna be done with our business, but I'm not actually going to kill Barry. It could have been that. Who knows?
Hmm. But yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. Well, in the end, he obviously delivers John to Barry, and Hank dies. How do you feel?
Oh
Your
my
favorite
god.
character dying in the bronze hands of
I
his lover,
mean,
of his boyfriend, of his
it
love of his
was his
life.
own doing. It's sad to see him
Hmm.
go. Someone described it as anticlimactic in a thing I saw, and I kind of get that, but at the same time, I don't know. It just
It was anticlimactic, like
like
him
yeah,
dying.
like the way I don't know if you're supposed to go down in some kind of blaze of glory, like exploding
Yeah, like
tanks or
just
something.
Hank.
Exactly because it's
Who like
yeah,
what?
but I don't know. You feel bad for him because yes, Fuchs killed him kind of in cold blood, but he did try to kill Fuchs. It's like what you were saying. You live the life of a gangster, you get the
Hmm.
death of a gangster, which sometimes could be
Hmm.
literally just someone just blasting you with no regard, like
Yeah.
um, and then he's there holding on to this idea of Cristobal that he still has as he goes away. Whether that's him
Hmm.
acknowledging what he did and being okay with the fact that he's going to be with Cristobal if he believes in any kind of afterlife, or still holding on to his delusion and kind of dying in the belief that he loves Cristobal and did what he did to feel safe and to protect himself and Cristobal. Whatever that is, it's just like it's sad to say goodbye to Hank, but like you said, with the way he lived, it was bound to happen. Like, how many shootouts and things has he just kind of escaped like this? Like, come on.
um, in that interview I mentioned about with Anthony Carrigan, he said something that I just really thought was I really liked. He says in because they asked him what do you think happens in
Mm,
that last moment because there's a kind of shift in Hank's eyes and like he thinks that in that moment that Hank kind of sees the life that he could have had with obviously he's holding Cristobal and like the life he could have had with Cristobal if certain decisions were not made. And I think that's a
mm,
nice thought. Um, I think dying in a series finale would be incredible. I would love that if I was an actor. Like the only thing that doesn't give you is like a chance for a spin
mm.
off or a sequel or whatever. But if you die in like the second episode of the final season, that's a bit. I wanted to have more time with
Yeah.
with my friends. Right? But if you die in the series finale, I'm like, yes, give it to me. Give me that death. Give me that big
Uh,
death in the
uh,
series finale. Whenever I think about series finale, I think about me dying. I don't know. I would really
uh,
like that as an actor.
or you
Um,
can just live
okay,
and
so let
continue and have a happily ever after if that exists.
uh, yeah. I mean, well, I guess it depends on
Mm,
what show we're in. Okay, so let's go to Barry, Sally, John, and Jean. Um, so Barry, in probably the funniest sequence of the episode, goes to pick up guns, and and then he's walking out of the store, and he's oh, this it's just funny. I don't know. It's a longer version of the joke they did a couple of episodes back, so I really
mm,
just like that. Um, Sally and John have an incredible scene in which Sally says to him after saying some other things, she says that Barry's a murderer, and then she says, "I'm a murderer too. I killed a man, and I deserve whatever happens to me, but you don't. You're a good person." Blah 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 blah. And I feel like that is the only piece of genuine like remorse in 4 seasons of this show. In 32 episodes, I don't think anyone has felt genuine remorse till that moment. I think Sally means
Yeah.
what she's saying and she feels what she said. It might be induced because she thinks she's about to die. I don't know, or she thinks about someone's about to die. But like in that moment, she's contrite. Well, I mean, what do you think of that scene between John
No, I
and
agree.
Sally?
It's a big moment for both of them because you can see how they end up like following on from there. Like I mentioned earlier, that some characters accept their decisions and the consequences of it, and others don't. Sally is one of the few who,
Mm-hmm.
through her like the PTSD she's been experiencing throughout the season, she sort of accepts it and resolves to be better. Because she does say, I'm a bad mom. Um, but she does take up the mantle from then on to hopefully, from what we can
Mm-hmm.
see, hopefully be better. And she even tries to bring Barry in on that as well. Like, Barry, we have to stop this, like, running away and like letting people suffer for our decisions. You should go turn yourself in. And you can see how disappointed she is in his reaction, in the way she turns away from him. That's another scene I guess we would have gone to later. And then like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, like I feel like that scene that you mentioned is just like, yeah, that's it. That's the moment for Sally. Like all these characters are getting through all these moments, and then they're realizing either they
Mm-hmm.
accept who they are or they don't. But like, yeah, unlike Hank, Sally goes the opposite way where she decides this isn't it. Like let me start by being honest with John at the very least. So because he's probably confused
Mm-hmm.
and terrified out of his mind. He doesn't understand why there are gunmen out to get us and calling his mother Sally. So I'm just gonna tell you the truth. And that's another question that we have for John as well. Like when he's watching the movie, like how much truth do you think Sally has told him? Like,
Well, yeah. I mean, well,
yeah.
we'll definitely talk about that towards at the end of the episode because it's interesting to say the least. Before I go on, I should probably mention that earlier in the episode we see that the DA and Jim Moss have gone
Mm.
public with their theory that Gene was the mastermind of everything. Um, following on from, I mean, obviously, I stand by what I said last week, where I was like, he's the architect of his own downfall, but because of how things ended up in this episode, I do feel a bit sorry for him because I didn't think it was gonna go that far. Like, like I thought it was his fault that he got caught and everything was being pinned on him. But I definitely thought that I don't know. I thought there was a way out, but we'll talk about that in a second. Yeah. So Sally sees that Jean is being blamed for Janice's murder, and like you mentioned, she tells Barry to turn himself in. And there's a moment where oh my god, there was actually some like I burst out laughing so many times
Wow.
this episode. So there's a point where Bill Hader says, "Yeah," and in my head I'm like, "Is that the show we're doing? Like, are we doing the show where he goes to turn himself in, right? Like just after one conversation, like is that actually what we're doing?" And then he goes, "Yeah, I don't think that's what God wants for me. I went in there tonight prepared to die, and for some reason he spared me. Honey, I've been
Okay. Yeah.
redeemed." And I was reading the New York Times review of the finale, and then the again, obviously, no free ads, but sometimes you have to. I don't want to play better free ad than plagiarize. And he said the reviewer says Barry sees redemption as a mechanical process. You follow the steps, you make some payments, and then
Mm.
you get the result rather than an internal struggle. Right? He's like, you do this and you get this. And I mean, let's go to the prayer because obviously I had to write it down. He says, Lord, I'm going to
I'm
die
crying.
tonight. Please give me the strength to sacrifice myself so that my son can live a long and pious life. Pause. And I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe those podcasts have been working. Maybe he's actually like, because he's actually a good prayer. He's like, I'm gonna do whatever I'm gonna do now. Like maybe I deserve it, but just I hope that I sacrifice myself and
Mm.
it's worth it. And then John lives a life, and then he follows it up with, and that by doing this, all my sins will be washed away. and I'll be redeemed in your eyes, and I'll be able to sit next to you in my rightful place in the kingdom of heaven for all of eternity.
I
Amen.
mean, it is the hope.
It's so
It's the hope,
funny.
but it's also the like, yeah, like like you said, it's an internal struggle. You can't just determine like, okay, I'm gonna do this one thing in exchange for that.
Mhm. He said, let me just kill myself here for eternal. It's how, like, you can tell that Barry has, I mean, this is a constant thread between him and Fuchs throughout the show. Where like Barry has listened to scriptures, to the word, all that stuff, because he's saying the right things, but he's got the wrong
Yeah,
lessons. Does that make sense? Like he say, like what does he say? Like that is like a good prayer. It's just the way at which he like what is, and by doing this, all my sins will be washed away, and I will be redeemed in your eyes, and I will sit next to you in my rightful place in the kingdom of heaven for all of eternity. Amen. That's someone that has listened to sermons. Like he didn't
mm,
just like gloss over it. He listened to what the preacher was saying, but then he got the wrong either approach or lessons or meaning or whatever, and then he's arrived at this part. It's just yeah, I don't know. But the New York Times reviewer, that way he said it was just perfect, was like, yes, he believes that you do this, you get this, and not the internal struggle of being contrite, of owning up to your sin. And what does she say? I think Sally says the only way you can be
yeah,
redeemed is by
it quite
owning up to it,
literally
right? And
spells
the
it
only way you
out.
can own up to it is by turning yourself in. And he doesn't want to do all of that. It's much easier for him to like have actual physical steps for him to do than for him to have to actually like be introspective and think and like discuss emotions and stuff like that. Yeah, Barry does not want to do that at all. But yeah, I don't know. I thought that whole thing was just really good. I mean, we knew that like Barry was using or was trying to use religion as a way to
Mm,
absolve himself of his sins, right? And this is the kind of the clearest example we've got so far. I just want to quickly filmmaking nerd bit just praise Bill Hader's use of very minimal setups. Like the scene between Sally and John, it's one shot of John's face, and then it's another shot of just from behind John's shoulder, and the entire scene plays out like that. Like some other shows would have like a scene from because Sally was obviously backing John, so you could have a scene on Sally's face with John in the background, and then from John's shoulder and maybe a wide, and then you're cutting and cutting and cutting. But here it's just one shot. The entire thing runs through. Sally turns around and faces the camera. And you're just like, we get the entire thing and we don't move. Just
yeah,
get it. I just really like that. And then even when Barry wakes up to see that Sally has left, the camera is in one spot for that entire scene. And in that one spot, we see Bill Hader's face, Barry's face. We see his confusion. We see when he
yeah,
stands up and then the bed is empty. We see him go outside and like so that just that one setup covers everything instead of 4 or 5 cuts and setup. Anyway, that was just a bit of yeah. I just thought that was like because you can be expansive and stylish when you want to be, but then when you can just do something in the smallest possible way, that's also very nice as well. Um, but yeah, as I mentioned, Barry is looking for Sally and John. And okay, before we go to him going to Jean's house to look for them, do you have any other
let
thoughts
me
up to
see.
that point that we haven't
Um,
touched on?
you've already mentioned the fact that Sally does quite literally tell him the only way to do that is by turning
Mm-hmm.
yourself in because she's tired of the bullshit. That's even what I put down. Like Sally's just tired of it and she's ready to like just accept. One thing I did notice when you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
people going public, I guess actually I guess I saw this more in the scene we're about to get to, which is when we meet up in Jean's house again. Because I noticed that the
Mm-hmm.
story that the DA mentioned that I was so like appalled by because like how could you have this theory? Leo is right there.
With the son.
Leo believes it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you believed that? Because now I'm questioning: have you believed that for the last 8 years? And if so, why were you so forgiven? Or was it when the DA
Mm-hmm.
realized DA said that they were like, oh, like they're probably never going to answer that question. But for me, it's just like it's just one of those things where it's like I'm
Mm-hmm.
struggling to believe that Leo thinks that that's why Jean shot him.
So he doesn't have to. I was thinking about this as well because obviously you had such a big problem with it last week. He doesn't. I don't think he has to think it for him to. No, I don't think he has to believe it for him to think it. If that makes any sense. Like I think he might. Maybe he was like, "Oh wait, that could actually be the
Mm,
truth." Also, he could just be like, "This is the best way for me to spin this." Because think about it, what is he? He's what? He's on the
Oh
LA
my god.
Times. Like, I'm not trying to like this show is a show about terrible people. So I'm not trying to say like maybe
But
he's just not
maybe
that great a
how
person
can
either.
they
Maybe he's
make the
found a way
one
to
person that
make
we've
it
been
work
looking
for
at as
himself.
potentially decent, like also be terrible? We don't,
We
but
don't know
like
Leo's
we
life.
get little
If
things where like for example, he's coming back to give Jean like I can't remember the name of the thing that Jean wanted that whatever that meal is.
yeah, he's a, yeah, he's doing some good things. But yeah, but like it might not even be like okay, maybe he's not. I'm not saying he's a terrible person, but like he's in that situation. He's like, this is the narrative that
Mm,
the DA and whatever are going with. If I start saying no, it's not true, where does that leave me? I'm next thing you know, I'm because if it's either he didn't know or he knew and he like
yeah.
played along, then that makes him
Oh
what
god.
a co-conspirator. It's like what's the best thing to do here? Um I don't think he definitely did not know
Yeah, of course
before
not.
Gene shot him. But he could also believe that maybe Gene thought he knew and then he shot him.
But
I don't think he
the
believes
headline
that,
says
but he
I
can
figured out,
say
and
it.
so he shot me. That's what.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to tell us that like niggas lie in
Maybe.
headlines all the
Fair
time.
enough.
I
Or
think
maybe
that's
the
what I think the show
interviewer
is
that
saying. Like
interviewed him took it out of
you
context to stay with.
maybe, but also Leo is standing in front of the house in like a full bodied picture. Like it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
been
no.
an anonymous interview. He's
But like
on the front
twisting his
page of the
words
LA
and stuff
Times. So
like
like
to
it's
fit a narrative that the DA has already spun.
mm,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's
If we
not
want
that
to
important, but
maintain
it
the fact
was
that Leo
just
is the best
when I
person in
saw
the
that, I
world.
was like both like, oh, so I guess this is actually a thing. But at the same time, it's just like, yeah. But anyway, we can move on from that one because there's stuff to
Hmm.
talk about Gene that
Yeah, no, but I don't think you're wrong for pointing it out. But I also think like it's not a
no,
mistake
yeah.
that it's there in the show. Like I think they're trying to say something, and it's up to us to take whatever we think they're trying to say. There are like 5 or 6 interpretations you can use, but they're definitely trying to say something. Um, yeah. So Barry finds himself at the house, and I can't remember Fred Melamet's character's name, Jean's agent, but he tries to get him to turn himself in to save Jean. And Bill Hader does some fine acting work with his face, and then he tells Fred Melamet's character to call the police. Does he finish saying he's going to turn
So
himself in?
like
Does he finish
I
the
watched that
sentence?
scene right before I watched that scene again right before we recorded. No, he didn't. Like he was saying it like, but the way the bullet comes, it's clear that like Gene had already fired or decided to fire before because he's saying it quietly to him like
Mm,
I'll turn myself, and then the bullet comes. So like the bullet hits and he's like reacting to the bullet as he's saying in. So I don't think Gene ever hears that he's going to
mm,
turn himself in.
yeah. Um, yeah, because I was reading an interview actually with Henry Winkler, and they asked him what do you think Jane would have done if he
Yeah.
heard Barry say that, and he was like Jane would have been the first person to call the police. Like Jane is not gonna sacrifice himself for that. Um, yeah, and then Bill Hader goes deep into his SNL bag, and then he says, "Oh wow!" And there is no reason a show should make me laugh out loud while the main character of the show is dying. I like the way I burst out laughing when he said, "Oh wow," and then they shoot him in the head. I was like, "Am I
Mhm.
sick? Am I demented? Like, why am I laughing at this?" Because it was so twice. I
Oh
watched the episode
god,
twice, and I
no.
laughed out loud both sides. Because it's not
Yeah.
like Bill Hader knows what he's doing by saying "oh wow" like that. Like, because apparently the first time they shot the scene, there's like a longer thing where Barry's like, "Oh, Jim, Mr. Chris, no, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do it," and then he shoots him. But then obviously in second take, he just says, "Oh wow!" And I'm just like, "That's very funny." I'm sorry, like it's just very funny. If those are your final words, that's very funny. And he doesn't say "Oh wow" as Barry. He says "Oh wow" as a Bill Hader SNL character, which is just to me just funny. I have nothing to say. I apologize if I was
You
being a bit
I
silly
mean
and just summed
for
up. It
for
was
the
a very
rest of
funny
us we were
moment.
watching that thinking, wow. I think if I okay, so here's one thing. I told you that I was very tired, right? The first time I watched it, I don't think I
Hmm.
noticed
This festival that you went to, what was it
nothing.
that made you
It was
think
just
you
the
were
fact
tired?
that I got home so
What were you
late
doing?
because for some reason there was something with the Jubilee line yesterday. I don't know, so it wasn't running. Yeah, so it
Yeah,
was
there
very
was a
difficult to
fire.
get home
No, it was
yesterday. I had
terrible.
to
It was
Uber in the
terrible.
end. Um,
Yeah.
but what's it called? I I don't think I noticed the part where Sally, for some reason, I must have been distracted or something, where Sally and John had gone away. So I saw, you know how there was like a mid-season title, a mid-episode title card as well. I was thinking about that. Like, why is there a mid-episode title card? Is it like, yeah, there was
Was that a mid episode that you
like
called?
randomly. Um, oh, you
It
watched it on
wasn't
the
one on my
screen? No,
screen
I
now.
watched because it was already late. I just watched it like, yeah, but there
Yeah,
was,
fair.
yeah,
Maybe I'll check now TV. I
was
didn't see because it wasn't on the screen. I'll check now TV because
there
there's a
was
point
on
where
Now
it fades to
TV though.
black.
Oh,
Yeah,
so maybe it
but I
wasn't
didn't know
supposed to
there
be
was
a
a
screen.
black.
Maybe it was just Now TV putting in the Barry like mid like maybe. But at that point, I was
Yeah.
like, wait, are they doing two alternate endings here? Where like there's a happy ending for Barry and like what's it called? And Barry
Very
just
wishful
doesn't want to
thinking.
give himself up. But then I was like, that doesn't make sense. So I went back and then I saw like again,
Hmm.
like, okay, so it's like the reason he went looking for Sally, because that's what didn't make sense to me. It was like, wait, why is he looking for, are they showing us
Okay.
what happened the day that Sally and John got kidnapped? Like he knew to go there. No, it doesn't make sense. So I went back and then I
Okay,
saw
I
that
get what you mean.
it was the morning
Hmm.
after and Sally and John had disappeared. And obviously because of the conversation they had, he knew. So he did like that. That's one of the things I was also picking up on is like again, the show reinforces that idea of acceptance and vengeance. Um, Barry does not go there
Hmm.
intending to turn himself in, but
Oh,
he
100%.
eventually
Yeah.
decides to make that decision. And like you said, you're finally, and I'm glad you're finally feeling sorry for Gene, but the rules are reserved. Yeah,
Well, the story is not that like let's calm down. It's not as if
fair enough.
I'm not
The
gonna light a
roles
candle
have
for Gene
reversed
this well.
here
Like
though,
let's
because
it's not
now
not
Gene
that
does
deep.
actually do something evil. Um, and he
Yeah.
does chase
Yeah.
vengeance. I remember, I think it was in season two where they're like, he who pursues vengeance digs two graves. Um, and that interview, I think it's the same interview you read that I read, where Gene is Heron Wickler is asked like, who has the better ending, and they're like, yeah, well, Barry is dead. That's a bad
Mm.
ending, but Barry is also depicted as a hero, whereas Gene is in prison for life, probably getting beaten every day.
Yeah, I have thoughts or at least questions on that, which
Mm,
I think we're going to get to in a very quick second. Because yeah, it was even before I read that interview, I was like, what's actually going on here? But before we get there, so I think we can accept like obviously we again like obviously
yeah,
Barry was about to say I'll turn myself in, but like he's Barry, like he
a
can
way
literally
out.
find
Yeah,
he could have found a reason in the next 5 minutes to like
but
persuade himself that that's not the right thing to do. Like he sees a blonde woman on the street. It's like, no, I have to go and find Sally. Like he's Barry. His self delusion is his middle
at
name.
the
Like
same
he could have
time,
found a way
right
out of it.
there, if Gene isn't so consumed by vengeance, he has a way out. Because like the agent says, you're the only one who can save Gene. This is Gene's way out of this dark situation that he's found himself in, and he's so remorseful. Well, not like he's so sad and broken about. Like you're even, the camera work is there. I
Hmm.
think it's the second time that we see Gene with an what looks like an opportunity to trigger warning, take his own life. Um, but
Hmm.
all of a sudden he starts hearing Barry, and again he's so driven by this rage that he inadvertently takes out his only way out as well, and that's Gene resorting to being that bad person, and he
Okay.
gets the consequence for that, which is his way out is now gone.
Eh, well, okay. So everything you said, 100% true. But like my wins was at the fact that like he didn't. I don't know. This is the least bad killing that the show has ever had. Maybe Sally. Maybe when Sally killed the tailor last
That was
last
very
season.
graphic.
But so you said inadvertently. It was graphic. No, I meant bad as
Oh,
in like morally
yeah,
justifiable.
I guess I get
I
that.
can morally justify
Yeah, I get what
both
you mean though.
this and last one, at least. Anyway, so Gene, because I have in my note that Gene knew what he was doing.
Yeah, of
Like
course.
he knew he was killing Barry. And obviously he didn't know that Barry was going to turn himself in. But again, we can call bullshit on that anyways. Um, because I think he willingly in that moment risks his own
Yeah,
freedom for what he considers justice. Like Jim must have probably have done the
No, I
same
think
thing,
Jim
if I'm being
Moss would
honest.
have let Barry turn himself in, and I think he would have.
Would
Jim
he?
Moss didn't look
Would
like
he? After they lost him last time, like remember what happened 8 years ago when the police was like, "Please just promise me that if you find Barry, you won't kill him." And I think Jim
yeah,
didn't
but I feel
answer
like
until they
that would
can't
have
make that
been
promise,
his
something like that.
test, and at least from what we see, like Jim didn't suddenly turn around and take Gene into his basement.
Hmm.
He right, I was literally about
The
to call
mind
it a
dungeon.
dungeon as
Hmm.
well. I was like, no, it's not technically a dungeon, but no, Jim didn't turn around and do that to Gene. So I still think a part of him still just wants public justice for um Janice.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
true. I mean, those are we don't need to go into that. That's a whole different thing. But my point is like, so I think Gene in that moment makes a decision. Makes a decision to kill Barry and for what for in to finally avenge the one person that he's loved, like the one real thing
Which isn't
that was
Leo.
consistent in his life, right? He finally avenges her murder, her death, her murder, and in the same vein risks his freedom, right? Because Barry's the person that can vouch for him. So I don't think my point is I don't think it was inadvertent. I think he knew what he was doing, but he probably saw it as the only
Okay,
decision
yeah,
he
in
could
that
make. I
sense,
don't
I
know.
get what you mean. When I said
Like he
inadvertently, I
wasn't
meant
like
like he wasn't aware of the fact
hmm.
that Barry, like in his head, obviously Barry is the person
Oh
that
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah,
save him, but
yeah.
he wasn't aware of the fact that Barry was now willing to save him.
Mhm.
Is what I meant by inadvertently. But because like even Harry
Yeah,
Winkler is like if he knew that Barry
yeah.
was going to save him, he wouldn't have done that. But he did that, and now he's in
He would
prison,
have done that.
which you can say is unfair in
Yeah.
that he's in prison for the murder of Janice, but he's also in. Okay.
Hold on to that. Just hold on to that thought 2 seconds. Just keep it fresh in your mind. Because we're about to go there. So we cut from this pullout of Henry Winkler and dead Barry. We cut to
Mm,
like applause. We hear auditory applause, right? And I'm thinking, oh, okay, like it's applause for Gene. It's kind of like a mirror version of episode one, I think, when we see Gene back at his masterclass and people are applauding him. So it's like, oh, it's applause for Gene for catching Barry or whatever. And then what do we see? We see his protege. His protege is the one receiving the applause. And I think that's kind of like a twisted kind of
yeah.
fate or whatever. His protege is the one getting the applause, and she's a high school drama teacher. So now we're years ahead, maybe 5, 6 years in the future, maybe even a bit more. I don't know. But Sally is now a high school drama teacher. And she's shutting down invites for from handsome men for dates, and she's this was real. This was real to me. This was when I was like, Sally, I empathize with you. Her son tells her, I love you, and she replies with self-doubt in her own creative work. And I was like, yes, Sally, that's right. That's the life. That's the life of a creative.
I'm
Somebody says I
crying.
love you. You say, well, how was my work? Was it good? Was it good?
Oh
Do you
no.
think people like the play? Um, so let's talk about Sally
Mm,
quickly, and then we'll talk about the end of the. We'll talk about the mask collector, and the end of the episode, the season, the series. So Sally has always been a talented narcissist, right? I think
mm.
one thing about Sally is that she's always been good as an actor. I think that's something that we've always known, but she's also incredibly narcissistic, right? Maybe even worse so than Jean, because she always cared about the art. Like she was pretentious in that way. She wanted to make good art. She didn't want to make the cupcake show
Mm.
with Dev Patel in the first scene or whatever. She wanted to make good art, but then she wanted attention. She wanted. So I'm wondering, maybe this is actually the best position for her. Maybe this is actually the best possible ending she could have had, because like she gets to make art. It's high school drama. Like she gets to make good plays, and everybody seems to really like the plays. And sometimes she gets attention. Like the last thing we see is her staring at the bouquet, right? And it's almost there are various facial reactions going on with her face there. So there are different things. I'm sure you can pick different things of what she might feel in that moment. But I think in that moment, that might be the most peace she could have ever got. If that makes sense. I don't know what are your thoughts on
From this
when
story, yeah, perhaps. I still don't know what her life is if, 8 years ago she never ran away with Barry or she never tried to steal that scene. But yeah, maybe then, let's say, for example, let's rewind back to when she attempts to steal the scene from her protege. Then, um, let's say she was successful and she becomes the movie star of that whatever, like
Hmm.
Wonder Woman meets Princesses of Shira, Princess of Power
Yeah,
meets, I don't know. Um, who does she become there? Does she kind of,
I don't think she's
feel
happy.
justified in her story? Yeah,
I
like
don't think she's
there.
happy.
Is she justified in her stories? Does she become more and more like both like Jean in the sense of being narcissistic, but also, um, how aggressive she was with what's her name? Natalie. Was it Natalie? Yeah.
Natalie, yeah,
Like how
that's
aggressive she
Gordon.
gets with Natalie. Like, does she become more and more like that? Is
Hmm.
that how she grows? So yeah, I kind of agree that yeah, this is in terms of her just making amends and being a better person and accepting to make impact on her local scale. That works for her because,
Hmm.
like you said, she's still really good. And even when she used the abusive method that we discussed earlier, Jean's method to teach, she got a performance out of someone who genuinely could not act,
Hmm.
and that person has now become the face of. Is that criticism of Gal Gadot? Anyway, um,
Well, I mean, I think we discussed it that week. It was like
yeah,
it might be toxic, but at the same time, it gets the result. Is like, where do we fall
yeah.
on this? And it's
But
yeah.
now you have to assume that she's probably using better methods,
Oh yeah, I mean,
and she's still getting performances out of the high school children.
yeah.
Like
Mhm.
the teacher basically alludes to that, like yeah, like he tries to get his students to
To come
support the
watch it.
theater
Yeah.
kids,
Hmm.
which is a thing in schools. Like people don't take it seriously, but he's like saying, but these kids are actually good, which
Hmm.
is like kind of like a testament to how good she is as a teacher. So yeah, in a sense, it is good to see that she takes that path. Um, I don't know if it's the happiest she could have been, but I think it's the happiest she could have been with the story she had up to that point where she didn't succeed with Stephen the role.
Yeah, I honestly think it's way before that, man. I think if she succeeds and gets that role, I don't think she has a good life because she's still going to be haunted by the Taylor killing. I don't think she ever gets the opportunity to like genuinely be remorseful out of everything she's done.
Mm.
I think she needs to go through those 8 years and whatever to get to that point. I think the only way she has a better life is maybe if she never like starts dating Barry. So like, but
That's
even
what I
at
mean. Like
that, the
with the
point is,
story we've had.
yeah, I genuinely think that from the moment from season one, everything that happened from season one, this is the best possible ending her life could have had. Because even then, let's forget that pre season one, she did have some kind of traumatic backstory. It wasn't obviously this, but it was something. And she was
Yeah.
able to work through that through her experiences with Barry. Maybe she would have on her own, maybe she wouldn't have on her own. I don't know. But yeah, I think if we stop, or rather, if we start at that point after Barry's in jail and she's working with the acting student, I don't think her life is fulfilling. I think
Yeah, at that point she's
she becomes
depressed.
rich. Maybe she gets to parlay that into doing some of the artwork that she wants to do, like the arty farty stuff. Maybe, but I don't know if she'll be settled. I don't know if she ever settled because she needed to do like personally. Professionally, she'll be great, but personally, she had to go through all those things to be able to get
Yeah.
to where she was.
And
So.
like teach people altruistically because like ultimately you see that her teaching is still okay, let me do what Jean did. This
Mm.
is her new method to find fame. And the moment she has an opportunity to steal a role, she does that. So I think she would have been that teacher that doesn't really have the best interests of like their students at heart. Like they're doing
Hmm.
it for themselves. Whereas now she's doing it for herself, but with the students in mind now.
Yeah, I'm just thinking now. Now that you said while you were speaking, I remember like once on stage, and I think when she's talking to the AP, I think said bio teacher or whatever, she praises the students. Like she gives them praise. Like she says they're
Yeah.
good. She says that it's all on them, which is very unlike previous Sally and very, very unlike Jean. So it's just like maybe she actually has grown. I don't think she's perfect. I don't think she's in utopia. I think there's still something back of her mind that's like, if only
Yeah, she's probably
we could have
still
done that.
wonders the life she could have had.
100%. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the end of the show. So, um,
It's like laundry and taxes.
what'd you say?
I said, it's like laundry and
I had a
taxes.
feeling that's what you said. Okay, so John, who is now older, played by Jaden Martell, who people might know from he was with the kid in Knives Out. Where else do I know him from? I think he was in the Defending Jacob show with Chris Evans. I haven't seen that, but yeah. So
I
he's
haven't
like,
seen it, but apparently he was in it.
hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought you meant it as in the Defending Jacob. Anyway,
Oh, I haven't seen that either, but
so him and his friend are going to watch the movie, which is taking a very long time to make because like that's a long time to make one movie. I guess they wanted things to die out. Probably waiting for the trial and everything to finish.
or it could have just been like because obviously
It's just old.
his
Fair, fair.
yeah,
Maybe
like maybe
yeah.
he just hasn't watched it because his
Just
mom
hasn't
just
watched it
never
in
let him
years.
watch it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Um. Yeah, because they're watching it at home and day. So the Mask Collector, which I think is an incredible title. I think it's an incredible title for the film, Mask Collector. Obviously that refers to Gene because Gene calls up earlier this season. No, last season that he was a Mask Collector. Anyway, so
Oh yeah, I was trying to wonder
we
what he
see a
was trying to.
variation of yeah. So I think obviously refers to mask collecting as in acting masks and also like
Mm,
killing people and taking their faces. Um, so we see a version, Warner Brothers version of Barry seasons 1 to 4. Um, we're not going to go through all of that because obviously that's a whole different podcast. But I think the important part is how it ends, right?
mm.
We are given the title card saying that Gene is serving life for the murders of both Janice Moss and Barry, and that Barry was given a veteran's funeral with full honors. That was when I was like, this is a really dark ending. This is so fucked up, Bill Hader. This is such a fucked up ending. Because I'm like, so I don't know. So a couple of months back, a couple of episodes back, right? I would have said that Jane would have hated this result because I thought he was changed. But now I'm not even so sure. I don't know what Jane's feelings would be about this because, like we you alluded to earlier, and I'll let you speak now. Um, he, I don't know how to put it. Like, actually, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this ending? Let's start with Gene. Let's focus on Gene first.
Like you said, it was dark because your immediate thing is this is cruel. Gene is
Mm-hmm,
in prison for stuff he didn't do. But then they're very careful to remind you that it's for the murders of both Janice and Barry, which he did do.
mm-hmm,
Um, and it's where I was coming to then, where I was like, at the end of the day, it's an ending that you might feel he doesn't deserve, but it's still his pursuance or his pursuit of vengeance is still what lands him in prison, which
mm-hmm,
like he murdered someone and he gets the consequences of that. Unfortunately for him, he also gets tagged on with other consequences that
mm-hmm,
weren't necessarily his fault but are part of the story, and now he has to take the rap for all of that. But in his head, he probably feels like, you know what, is justified. I get to kill the guy
mm-hmm,
who killed the person I love, and I'm okay with that, and I live that way, and that's just his life now. Whereas Barry, on the other hand, as much as Barry throughout the series never quite understood what it meant to redeem yourself, could you argue then that in the moment where he like calms down, realizes Sally and John are not there? Because when I was watching this, I originally thought that he was saying that in case Sally and John were there to like impress them, like maybe because now he's now realized, or maybe they weren't even there. He's now realized, okay, they're not there, but so Sally is gone. But maybe if Sally sees me turn myself in, she would like understand and want like she'll see that I'm better. Like
mm-hmm.
Sally will see that I'm better, and maybe when I'm finally out of jail, we can be that family again that I saw. Um, Maybe that's a thing that he was holding on to. And that's how I saw it the first time. But when I was thinking about it now, I was like, was he in that moment genuinely deciding to turn himself in, not in a mechanical way, but genuinely believing, okay, I still don't see that he could have possibly just flipped a switch and suddenly understood how redemption is actually earned. But let's say he
Yeah,
was, then is that the reason that technically he also gets not a good ending? Like he still dies, he still has to deal with the consequences of his actions, in that his destruction of the lives of everyone around him, i.e., Hank, Fuchs, well, maybe not Fuchs, but Gene especially
Hmm.
um, brings about that Gene kills him, and Gene's the one to end him, which is why the OWL works on so many levels. But Gene kills him. He's accepted that, but in his death, he gets seen as a hero. Is that sort of like uh, this person picked to be good at the end, and so they got a somewhat good ending, or is it just like it's just more of Gene's punishment that he gets to see that Barry is still exonerated as, or whatever the word is, as a hero? Because
Hmm.
remember, Barry said, Gene said at the start of the season, when, or not at the start of this time jump, when they offered him the movie, he's like, I will not allow you to kind of like create Barry into this hero. And that's eventually that's exactly what happened. So it's more of Gene's punishment for picking vengeance than Barry's reward for, at least at the very end, trying to be better.
I'm going to start with Barry,
Mm.
and I will walk back to Gene because lots of things you said,
Yeah, I was
you made lots of
talking.
points. No, no, you made a good point. I think Barry was in that moment about to really say, I had myself in. But he could have been doing it for him as part of the mechanical thing. Like he thinks to hand himself in will result into redemption, whatever. But I think, which is why I asked you before when I was saying that line, I think it's very intentional that the show doesn't let him say it. The show doesn't give him a chance to attempt redemption. Like we know he's going to say it, but he never says it. Right? He's shot before he says it.
Mm.
So for all intents and purposes, he never really like starts that journey. So we don't even whatever reason, whether it was genuine or it was part of his mechanical formula, he just never says it. But I have it in my notes because I'm like, did he? Because I have in my note that he got his redemption, right? And he got his redemption in the form of the one thing that only ever gave him sense of purpose since he left the army, which is movies, acting, film, right? Like he got his redemption, and to be honest, we've seen that that probably lasts longer than the truth. Like if obviously the truth, everybody believes that this is the truth, but if it wasn't the widely believed truth, what is on film will probably last longer because that's what people will believe is the truth.
Mm.
So, so in my head was like, I was like, would Barry be happy with this ending because he got his redemption in the end through a movie? It's all bullshit, and everybody that's involved knows it's bullshit. Well, I think he would have been happy, which is why I was like, this is kind of a really dark ending because yeah, he dies, but he kind of wins in death.
Yeah.
I kind of shudder using that word because I don't like using that word in terms of this, but like yeah, it's like did he win here? Like he got his redemption. He didn't get it when he was alive, and depending on what your thoughts are on the afterlife, maybe he never knows that he got the redemption. But like his memory got the redemption. Like his son, like you mentioned earlier, like how much does his son actually know? Because his son has a smile. So is his smile like my dad was a piece of shit, but at least people will remember him that way. Won't remember
Mm.
him that way. Or was his smile like
Oh, my dad was a
these guys don't know
hero
what
all
they're
along.
doing? Yeah, like so it's like what does that smile mean? Is it does he know the truth and he's like, well, at least people will not know that that's the truth, or does he think that that's the truth? Um,
I
yeah, I don't
honestly,
know.
I don't know, and I think they obviously leave that open on purpose.
Of
It
course, 100%.
works, but
We don't want to be told.
yeah, I
That's
like
bad
the idea that
delivery.
he knows the truth because it supports the idea that Sally is growing. Because we see Sally
Hmm.
start to break down those walls of lies in that episode. So you have to assume that at some point, maybe she does tell him exactly what really went down.
Hmm.
Maybe not.
Well, I
Maybe
mean, he
as he
definitely.
grows older, she tells him more and more. But like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's
I mean,
fine.
he for one knows that that's not how he was
Yeah,
saved. So he knows that part is not true.
yeah.
Um, and then Gene. So Gene's ending is like this. He obviously gets justice, and he gets a movie made about him. But he spends life in prison, and in that movie, he spends it as the villain.
No, it's
So I
anything.
don't know. Like, I guess the right thing to assume is that he wouldn't be happy with the ending and with the film and everything.
Yeah, but
But
he
can we
got
say
his
that for certain? Can we
vengeance.
say that? And
Like,
you're fixated on this vengeance thing, which is fair enough because
it's
that's just
more
the one
like
thing that he.
it's the idea that Gene being Gene probably isn't happy that the
Mhm.
world thinks he did something he didn't do, for sure.
Mm.
but there's a or maybe an anger in, because like after he kills Barry, the camera pans to him for a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is he in that moment realizing, oh no, what have I done? Or is he feeling
No.
just exactly? He feels justified
I think
in
I
that
think
he
he's
has.
feeling justified. He's feeling numb. He's feeling nothing. So it's possible that he's in prison and he doesn't care about whatever
Exactly.
has been said
He's
about
like
him.
he's done. He's
He's
like
done his
he's
part.
yeah, he's just done. He's okay. Like the world can do whatever they want. They can make their movie, they can make their millions, but he's not involved. The one thing he did care about was honoring Janice, and he has done that by avenging her death because he took care of the person. Because oh yeah, I was gonna mention this because in a sense, it's shocking when Gene does that because of how it's shot. Like pun intended,
Mm-hmm.
yes, but like how it's filmed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we should have known that Gene wanted this revenge because Gene shoots Leo thinking it was Barry, shoots
Mm-hmm.
twice as well, meaning Barry wouldn't have known this because Barry wasn't there when Leo was shot. But as
Mm-hmm.
viewers, we should have known that the second Gene finds himself in front of Barry, he's going to shoot Barry. It feels like something we should have known, but that's something I only picked up on the second watch because I remembered, yeah, like
That
he
makes
did
sense.
shoot Leo, meaning he was ready to kill because he shot Leo and then he said "fuck you" or something like that. Like he
Yeah,
was
in a
that
very funny
angry
way.
with Barry. So in a sense, it was something he was always going to do. So while Barry himself was maybe apologetic, maybe ready to turn himself in, or maybe trying to find redemption by doing the step of turning himself in because he's now been told that that's what
Mm-hmm.
he needs to do. Gene is still fueled by rage, and that's why I'm hanging on this vengeance because that's something that has driven Gene for a very long time. And now, because of that, they've now made the movie only this time. Gene is the main character, but he's the villain, and Barry is the hero. And this cat and mouse
Yeah.
between student and teacher is now reversed. And yeah, like you said, Barry wins in a sense. He wins the cat.
Mm.
Oh, yikes. He wins the cat and mouse or whatever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's just a dark end because there's no
Yeah.
winners. There
It's
are no
like
real
yeah.
winners.
It's the dark ending, and I what succession after. So that
Yeah,
was
I'm
interesting.
about to go see that.
Um. Yeah, I don't know. I thought this was a really good Barry episode, maybe a good series finale. But I'm also like, I'm someone I'm really trying to like, I don't think we should hang too much on series finales as
You think
episodes.
there's a spin-off in
Like,
the way some of the characters have been left?
no, no, well, no. I don't think. I think
Oh,
Bill Hader is
okay.
way too busy. He has more
Fairness.
things on his mind. He has things he wants to do. No, I just mean as in, I don't like the thing of like a show has been so good, and then we're like, you have to stick the landing, otherwise we invalidate everything that you've done in the past 50 episodes. I'm like, no, come on. So I don't think this is the best episode of Barry ever made. No,
Mm,
but I don't know. I love Barry, and I think it was a great ending.
I
So
get what you mean. Because I was gonna ask if you felt like they stuck the landing.
like in terms, I think they had a great episode. I think it made sense. But I don't think it's the best episode of Barry. Like the people going to the finale it's going to be the best episode of the show ever. And I'm like, no, that's
I don't know.
really
There will
unfair.
always be episodes that will be
Tough
like
task.
greater than
Yeah.
the pilot or the finale. I think it's more
Like
of,
I'm not coming
do
out.
you see the episode like a positive end? Like to me personally, I like Miss Maisel's finale. Right? I don't know how.
Well, I haven't seen
I
that
haven't
too.
seen how people
Calm down.
reacted to it yet. But like I saw someone tweet earlier that they didn't like the way the season was going, and I was like, oh, interesting. But um, or you could have a finale that's more like very divisive. Like some people loved How I Met Your Mother the way it ends. I'm one of those people that absolutely detest the ending. Those last two episodes, we can just pretend it never happened and it ends.
Yeah, but that's okay. So that's my point. I don't like there are clear flaws with the final season of How I Met Your Mother.
Mm,
I have rewritten that season so many times in my head, but I still rewatch How I Met Your Mother so many times.
I get you.
Like I just randomly watch random episodes, even though I don't like the final season. Like so, like I don't think a final episode, a final season is more, but like a final episode should change how we feel about
Yeah,
the show.
yeah, like a
But
Game of
anyway,
Thrones.
final thoughts on Barry.
Ooh, Final thoughts. One, you were wrong about the last shot. I know you said like obviously things can change in editing, but you did tell us a little
Yeah.
scoop. Maybe the
Well, I think Winkler probably meant it was probably the final scene shot. I'm assuming that was the final shot. I'm assuming they shot
oh,
all the
I thought you were
like
about to give us
John
like
stuff
the
before.
excuse that maybe the final shot, like Winkler was trying to be cheeky and tell us the final shot was the final
Oh no, no,
gunshot.
no, no, no.
Um,
No, no. I think they probably shot that scene last,
mm,
and they shot the John stuff a bit earlier because obviously it's winter, so they probably shot it even before.
maybe yeah, but I was like,
Um,
was it
but yeah,
was
I
it
was.
gunshot? Because technically the final shot was actor Gene, but either way it's still Gene. But no, that there was something you touched on as well about obviously like it's not a question of whether you stick a landing, but many shows have attempted to have that trifecta of redemption, consequences, and justice. Um, and I feel like a part of Barry and Jean's ending brings me back to, and even Sally's, when we're talking about characters accepting who they are, and when Sally says the
Hmm.
only way to really be redeemed is to own up to your actions. They bring you back to like I can't really remember the specifics of the ending of BoJack Horseman, but I remember that he had to still go to he went to prison, didn't he? Am I spoiling BoJack?
BoJack.
Was it prison? He has some consequences. Like he still had to accept that he had done what he had done, even if he had become a better person. He still had to like go through,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And like
yeah.
some like it was just one of the things that I picked up on that the show seems to like the show found its own version of making sure that the characters, in a sense, get what they deserve or what they're looking for.
Hmm.
Um, Based on the choices that they've been making all along, while walking that fine line of you can't exactly escape consequences, but consequences are things that happen. Um, but your redemption has a lot more to do with who you are now, like that internal struggle. What have you learned from your situation? Because, for example, Gene has probably reached the person that he is, and he's okay with that, and the consequences are now just outside his world, and he's just like, I've done what I've done.
Hmm.
And other people are moving on. Like you can't escape consequences, but you can. Redemption is possible. It just is not something you can put in place of consequences in a sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And on that note, I will wrap it up. I don't think
First,
I can. I don't think I can one up that.
wow,
Yeah, thank you everyone. Please look out for our other episodes and finales this week. Succession will be out now. Ted Lasso will be out later in the week. And I don't know. I'll figure out some stuff. I don't know what we're gonna do next week and going forward,
oh,
but we
yeah,
have some
so many
ideas.
shows.
Um,
Do a Dave. Do
yeah,
a
but
rundown of
thank you.
Dave.
Yeah, I haven't even like the last 3 months have been so busy. Like I haven't not touched Dave at
Yeah,
all.
I didn't
I want to
even
watch
know
this new
it.
season of
It
Dave
it
as well.
skipped my mind, but I watched it this past
Um,
weekend.
the great came dropped his season and just left, and I haven't even touched that. So yeah, I have to catch up.
So
But Jeremiah, thank you for this season of Barry.
thanks for
Thank you
having me.
for sticking with us. Yeah, I don't know, thank you guys for listening. Yeah, join us next week when we'll be covering more TV with Oscar winner. Bye
Bye,
guys.
guys.